Thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate you, and we're happy that you're here with us. This is the F5 Recovery Podcast. This is One Pretty Ricky. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Kirsten Hooven and Adam Martin today. We are going to be covering all sorts of amazing topics, but specifically we're going to be talking about spiritual tools. But of course, none of this would be possible without some amazing sponsors who help support our podcast. So we want to, of course, shout out our F5 Project and the Ridge Recovery and Treatment Center, as well as GoAwayBear.com, and this amazing space that we were able to be in, courtesy of Heat Transfer Warehouse and Church from Fargo. So stick around. Feel free, of course, if you like and love what we're doing, feel free to please like and subscribe. We'd love to be able to continue to bringing you great content. What's up, y'all?
Zing.
Yeah.
I need one more cup of coffee, I think.
Dude, we have no coffee right now.
Yeah.
This
might be. Is it more centric maybe, or will it be more like toned down because of less coffee? I don't know. But I feel like in recovery, I drank coffee before.
Only you can go from no coffee to in recovery.
Well, like now, because it was like, because before coffee was like, I was like, just kill your high. So I was like, I don't want that. Like, I was like, if I'm going to do it, I want to, do it all the way. Whereas now it's like, okay, well, I don't have anything. So I was like, I'll drink coffee because it's kind of like leveling me out.
Yeah. That's called addiction.
Oh.
Yeah, that whole thing you just said there. That's in a textbook, actually, I read.
You should probably just not drink coffee anymore.
Even with coffee, I wanted all of it.
Yeah. Just drink coffee for the effect. Wow, that's addiction.
It is like jet fuel in meetings, though. Like, my parents are avid coffee drinkers. Cannot drink recovery coffee. Can't. It should we should sell it as recovery coffee.
Yeah, but some places it's like mud.
Yeah.
It's like I'm gonna drink. You know what? I'm gonna attempt.
This hurts.
This 16-ounce mud.
Yeah.
And by halfway through it, and then halfway through, because it took half the meeting to get halfway through it.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I wonder why they only have one small coffee urn for 100 people. Oh,
why am I so shaky?
And like early in recovery, you're not like, you don't have a lot of money. You're not eating like 3 meals a day.
Yeah.
It's way better to drink like that coffee on like a full stomach or something like that. But man, you're like probably haven't eaten that day.
Yeah.
You're sitting in a meeting, you're a half hour into it, and you got the jitters. You're just like, oh, why did I come to this meeting? What is recovery?
And that's spiritual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a spiritual tool right there.
Okay.
That coffee.
So define what you mean spiritual tools, because I looked over at Darby as soon as you said that, and she was like,
like my altar, or
anything that you're using to connect to your higher power.
Wait, what?
I'm kidding. I don't have sacrifice people's hopes and dreams.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, no, I don't.
Tools.
Well, it was just Easter, so I figured, kind of tie it in around the topic. Yeah. So just like things that, how do you connect with your higher power?
Well,
do you connect with your higher power?
I mean, Easter eggs, that seems very godlike. No, I don't know. Isn't that a weird thing, though? Because we're like, Jesus would have hid his own Easter eggs, I'm sure.
Oh, my gosh.
Anyway, it just seems goofy. It's a goofy mix of pagan and, it's a goofy how they did that. But, don't get me wrong, I like eating chocolate Easter bunnies, so I'm not going to complain about it at all. But I don't know much about that stuff. I really don't.
Well, I think Ricky's more personal.
I get it.
We don't want you to give an expose on
And then one Easter, I had to wear a stupid hat.
Yeah. We want you to talk about the theology of Jesus and prayer today.
No, and that is something like Christianity or like organized religion doesn't play a part in my spirituality at all, only because I guess I was raised Lutheran, so everybody sat in the back and nobody talked. And then, but when I got into recovery, I I don't know why the word God just made me so enraged at some level. It was just like, it's everything I don't want to be. It's like, you say to be all these good things, and then I watch people do completely the opposite. Anyway, I had just been like turned off by it or whatever. And maybe it was a darker time. I was working at, funeral home and all that stuff. It was darker days, but I was able to connect with the spirituality part, because many times, how many times have you heard people come in, they're like, well, it's a God thing, I'm not going. They say God or they pray, I'm not doing that. But I can promise you that if my dealer or the bartender was like, we're going to have to get on our knees and pray before I can give you this next, bump or whatever, I would have immediately done that. You know what I mean? So it's just like, what's the carrot? Or I have an illness that tells me I don't have it. So anything you say that is might offend me, I'm going to find a reason to not go to a meeting. So that's just an excuse. Like, am I willing to be uncomfortable? Am I willing to ask enough questions to learn about this stuff or not? But I think over the years I found like my own spiritual kind of groove, and it's just different than the norm maybe or whatever. But I think it's vital to have some kind of spiritual connection, to believe that just to have hope in the future. I don't know what exactly that offers, but and I've kind of found I do all the woo-woo stuff, like that's my jam. I like the crystals and the sage, and I like all those things, the nature and grounding, all of that stuff like resonates with my heart. Yeah. And recovery has never said, well, you can't do that. That's weird. Now you have to leave, So I think that the bias we come in with are just created by our addiction, because it wants us out, Right. But anyway, so that's kind of what I've found over the years. And I remember when we had kids, my mom said, how are you going to teach morals and values if you don't take them to church? And I just thought, and I was like, I don't know how to answer that at the moment, but I know I can do it. I know I can create a good person without scaring them into being a good person. You know what I mean? Anyway, and I have amazing kids. I don't know how that happened. Like, they're really great, kind kids. And like we were saying before, how like there's only one rule in our house: don't be a dick. Mm-hmm. And I've always told my kids, like, if I hear you a well-placed swear word, fine. I don't care if you know what I mean? Like, it can be funny in the right context, know your audience, And they've had some fails, but whatever. And so I'm like, I would rather you that. But if I hear you call somebody stupid or fat, then I will fuck up your day. Then, I mean, like, that is stuff that people are in therapy for later on in life, like me. So, anyway, but, so it's just about, like, kindness and all of the things that recovery has taught me to be giving and make amends and all of those things. Those are all huge spiritual things for me anyway. But
which I think when you talked about, like, crystals and sage, like, that's connecting to something greater than you.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Not like that.
It is. Yeah, it is. I have already cast a spell on you guys. No big deal.
Salem.
I think it's just a different approach, and I think a lot of times, I think I was having a conversation about this yesterday with a guy who was like, man, it's just hard to understand.
Yeah.
So the people who like follow the moon, or like Mercury's in retrograde, just all these different like things, most of the time people just scoff at it or just ignore it because they don't understand it.
Yeah.
Or they don't want to understand it, so they're like, oh, that's weird, that's dumb, that's not for me.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't ever spend any time with someone who does do it and can like explain it, like, well, this is how this works or operates, and you're never really going to know.
Yeah.
And you're never going to know if it could potentially work for you. Because I think my relationship with, especially when I got in recovery, like my relationship with God like changed a couple of different times, but like when I got in recovery, it was like, how do I like, what are me and God cool now?
Yeah.
Like, cause I'm making all these amends, and I'm just constantly getting reminded of all the things that I did
Yeah.
when I was using, and like, oh my gosh, so now what is God to me now?
Yeah.
And it was this whole weird journey of like, how do I reconnect with Him now when I'm clean? Because I was going to church and doing all the things when I was using,
Yeah.
and so now that I'm going to church when I'm not, like, it's just a weird kind of construct of like, how do I have this relationship with Him when I can actually like listen to Him now, if that makes sense. And this is a whole So it was just like just a weird place to kind of be, to like, how do I be a Christian and be clean when I was a Christian and not clean, and I understood how to do that.
Right.
But now it's like just still trying to figure it out, and it keeps changing. And
Yeah.
it's like, man, it felt a whole lot easier when I was just using it, because it was just clean, cut, and dry. I'm a jerk. Lord, please forgive me. I'm gonna screw up again. Lord, please forgive me. Whereas now it's like, well, I haven't. It's hard to ask for forgiveness when when in my mind I haven't done anything wrong, when I am doing the right thing.
I'll just ask your wife.
Yeah, that's probably what it is.
Yeah, she'll tell you what you need talked.
You should go to God for
Yeah.
this. Okay, all right, the list is long enough.
Yeah.
I'll come back.
But is that like in how you were raised? Do you once you make amends or whatever, is it like wiped clean? Do you get a do-over? How does that work?
No, it was like you're constantly like tearing before, like you're at, like, so when you were talking about the altar, like growing up, it was like stay here and until you feel something, and so it's like, well, it could be a minute, it could be an hour, it doesn't matter. You're supposed to stay there and wait.
Like physically in a place?
Physically, like on your knees, like praying, doing all that. And so then it's like, what if I don't, like, at a certain point, you're kind of just like giving up. Like, all right, well, clearly God's not coming.
Yeah.
Like,
I've been
still here, Lord, whenever you're ready.
I talked to him. He said, I don't have to feel bad anymore.
Right, like, all right, I feel
We're
good
cool.
now. We're cool, but like, it was like, no, you still stay there. Or then they would, what would happen often is like, we would go to the, go to the altar, pray, ask for forgiveness for whatever my mom deemed that I screwed up and had to do. And then I'm like, all right, good, and I would get up. And then like my dad would like, no, you stay here. Like, but I'm good. Like I felt it. Like, and then like, how do you explain to someone else that you felt the Holy Spirit? Like, yeah, God is already like, all right, I repented, we've moved on, but nope. And he was like by the neck, like, nope, you stay here till I'm gonna be the one to tell you. And so it's like,
I'm what you're waiting for.
it's like, okay, all right. And there was a lot of that growing up, for sure.
So that was how you grew up. What did you grow up with?
Nothing. We didn't go to church. We didn't do. I didn't get into at least the church aspect of my spirituality until I was an adult. Like probably almost to my 30s or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but prior to that, the only people in my family that went to church was my grandmas. And they were vastly different. My grandma was a Southern Baptist, and then my other grandma was Catholic. So even their, difference in, like when you mentioned earlier about how are you going to raise them with morals and values, I mean, then I should not have any.
Right.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think that, there's a general, at least the Christians they call it like a general revelation, right? Like you don't have to go to church or anything. Like you'll just know by looking out into the world that there's just no way that a man could have created all this. Mm-hmm. And by default creates a level of morals and values in the community, observation of the world. When you look at the stars, who created all this, that you don't, if anything, church can, I guess, help with that, but it's pretty biased, on their, and so I guess my spiritual is, it's conflicting at times, I think that there's a lot of faith in it, that What if it's not true, right? I mean, like one of the things I get really deep into my head. So it's just, Moses was in all major religions. So was Abraham. And then we chose one of them, and it wasn't even like a choice as much as it was somebody coming and telling me that this is the right way.
Yeah.
So based on environment, based on, maybe even lack of context, whatever, I basically am going on faith that whatever I've been told is right, And so with that, I think that there's, it gets to a point where it's got to be a personal thing. And I think I really like the, how Jesus himself was just like the greatest like criminal justice reformer, because there was all these people that were really staunch about the law, and they were like creating rules on top of those laws. It's very American, right? Like it's like, we have a culture and then we have laws. And when you put the culture on top of those laws, it creates rules on top of them. And then people like hold you accountable to those rules as if they were laws, right? Like, it's don't steal. And then you're not stealing, but then you just happen to like think about it and tell someone about it, and they're just like, "Oh my God, you're a bad person." It's like, whoa. Wait till I tell you about the rest of the stuff that I think about, And so,
moving on.
And I think that's a pretty extreme example, but like, it could be any, even back in the day with the Pharisees or whatever, it was called legalism, and they would, one of the rules they had was they weren't allowed to leave their property on a day. They weren't allowed to go a certain amount of length from their property. So what they would do on a day that they could do that is they would take portions of their property and put it down the road, right? So that way they were always within the length of their property wherever they went, right? Yeah. And so that's a form of like legalism where it's like that's not really like that wasn't the intent of the law. Right? The intent wasn't to try and find ways around it.
Yeah.
Or the intent wasn't to I think sometimes the worst thing that happened to the Christian religion is it filled its rooms or the churches with people. Right? And so then you go to church or whatever, and then you have some, guy there that really, really believes what he believes to be real, and he is impressing it upon you, and it just creates this kind of traumatic event of somebody grabbing someone by the back of the neck and putting them back down and telling them they're not ready,
Yeah.
And so it's, I think that, for me, I've had those kinds of events, at church where you just feel like you're kind of worthless and you're not the same and you're not cut from the same cloth, and whether it's through body language or like a microform of aggression or whatever the case may be, or a friend that you went to church with that ends up not being your friend as much when you're at church, whatever, like it's the people. And so it has to be personal. There has to be and I think that the more, and it's a journey, just like recovery. And I think if I was, happened to be a pastor of a church and somebody came to church and was just like, I think everything here is wrong, but I'm willing to continue to come, I'd be like, you can sit up front with me.
Yeah.
Right? And you got any questions through this whole process, I'm willing to answer them. If you want to go get coffee, you want to smoke cigarettes outside the church or whatever, or if you relapse and then show up here, like this is meant to be an ER for spiritual beings, right? It's not like that in a lot of places.
Yeah.
They've, to the point where they have park benches outside their churches and they put like bumps on them so people won't sleep on them.
Well, it breaks my heart.
Like sometimes I wonder, that's why I say he was like the greatest criminal justice reformer of all time, because he didn't like say don't listen to the law, and he didn't change it, but he fulfilled it, right? And so then, because no one could. They had so many laws and rules that nobody could have followed all of them.
Right.
And he comes in and he does it, and then he's just like, these rich people, it's going to be really hard for them to get into heaven. These people that are convicts and broken and prostitutes, it's going to be easier for them to get into heaven than it will be for someone who has everything. Right? And he was like, he just totally evened it out. He's like, you get mad at them for like committing adultery, but all you do is think about it.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're no different. I was like, dang.
Yeah.
Dang.
I knew it.
Welcome to Jesus. You're like, he just came in and he's a contender. Like he just showed up and was just like, no, everything here is wrong. And so I think that's my, so then it just comes down to, is it real?
Yeah.
That's the big piece. That's a piece for most, new. I mean, even, I think that, there's, if there's people out there that like 100% like have no doubts and no whatever, like personally, I don't think that's real. Like, I just don't.
Yeah.
Like there's gotta be thought, like, if it's a, like, then I wonder sometimes if it's a form of like narcissism or psychotic, like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like to have that 100% whatever, like, is it really faith if it's 100% trust?
Right.
Like, I think the whole cool thing about spirituality is that we don't know. And it does take a level of faith.
Yeah.
And I got to take that leap, and it makes it even better. It's like when you get into a relationship where there's like, well, this is going to work 100%. Like, how do you know? I just know. Well, there's two people involved here. Like,
Yeah.
you're basically saying that they're going to be perfect, right? And we're going to be perfect together. There's a lot of faith going into a relationship, and so
They all start like that. I'm in love before they know we're dating.
yeah, I'm going to get sober and it's just going to work, right? I'm going to be in recovery and I'm going to have no issues.
Yeah,
it's 100%.
it's gonna go.
This is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And so no, I just don't think it's real to not have doubts. And so what I usually tell people who are new to faith or new to recovery or just getting into a relationship or whatever, is just like, listen, you just got to be graceful on yourself and the people around you. Like, you're going to have doubts, you're going to have miscommunication, you're going to feel like you're alone, you're going to feel fear, you're going to feel all these things. And the only thing that's going to get you through it is that you're going to like have faith that this is going to work out.
Yeah.
There's no other, and hopefully you have some fun on the way.
Yeah. And don't paint yourself into a corner with like, oh my God, 100% I'm in. So then when something goes south, you don't want to be like, okay, well, maybe it was 80%. You know what I mean? You don't want to, your ego won't let you say that. So
you get into it and you're like, she's
yourself.
perfect. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life with her. How long have you known her? 3 days.
Yeah.
It's like, holy cow.
3 days online.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't even have to have met for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But I've had some when I got sober, I had gone the religious route. I had gone the atheist route. Like, I had tried the agnostic route where I just, where I believed that there was something and I just didn't know what it was, right? And then I went even the Gnostic route where it was like I had a special revelation of who it was, it was kind of, in the big book, it talks about the educational variety. And I think, I've learned as I've gone, not necessarily what works and what doesn't work, but like, there's just a level of like, what's producing faith, what's producing trust, what's working in my recovery, right? And so like when I got sober, I was just like, I don't know who you are. And I really like Jesus. And so if you could just like, I promise that if you help me stay sober, if you just make it a little bit easier for me to stay sober, I will help as many people as possible. Yeah. And it was like, I hear people say God doesn't make deals and this and that, but, and he probably didn't make that deal. But whatever happened that day, he made it easier because it was never like that before. And I've not struggled in 10 years to obsessively think about using.
Yeah.
And that was always the thing. It was like when a normal person drives by a liquor store, it's just like, oh, beer's on sale.
Yeah.
And then just drive by. Like, I don't even know the beer's on sale. I don't give a shit
Yeah,
that
I know.
the
I
beer's
don't
on
care what's
sale.
on
I just know
sale.
that building has something that's going to mess me up and make me feel better. And I will obsess about it and drive around the block multiple times. That moment, that heat of the moment where there feels like there's butterflies just driving race cars in my stomach, and I can't think about it. That has not happened in almost 11 years.
Yeah.
And so that was how I knew that it was like removed. When I like.
So whether you understand, I think the idea that like I have to understand it to be a part of it, that's just asinine, because that's not going to happen. And so if your sobriety is hinging on that, game off. But and even if spirituality is just, like for me, it's a moment in the morning to collect my thoughts, focus on doing the next right thing instead of some scam, and then moving forward. Even if it just changes my perception of the day, if that's all it is, it's worth it, you know. But to think that I need to understand this before I can get on board with it is just crazy. And it is that faith that like I know in my life, whereas before I'd be paralyzed with fear because I wouldn't know how things were going to end, and I'd be so worried and consumed with little life events that I just didn't know how it would end. And now I just have faith that it's going to end, you know, because I have a connection with something bigger than me. It will end the way it's supposed to, you know what I mean? And either way, I'll be okay with it. And that's the connected part for me, is that I have learned how to be okay with whatever the ending is, because it's not, I know that even if I don't get what I want, that my higher power or whatever, even during the darkest times, it's prepared, the universe, whatever you want to call it, it's preparing me for what I want. It's just like, but there has to be dark times or I would never appreciate the light. It's like getting my kids ready to go sledding or some ungodly thing. It's like, listen, you're going to have to do all this shit that sucks. Like, you're going to have to go get long johns, find your boots, you know what I mean? You got to do all this stuff. We can't just say, I want to go, and then go. You know, you're going to have to do all this stuff. So it's just like, as a parent, you prepare them for what they want, but they can't see the big picture of like, oh, this adds up to this at the end. You know what I mean? And I'm the same way with my own emotional sobriety, my emotional maturity, all this stuff. Like, I don't know how this all adds up to make a decent person. I just have faith that if I just am humble enough to ask questions and take the next right action, life has proven to me that it will work out, you know? Okay. And even if I don't get what I want, that is probably absolutely what I need at that moment, you know? But it's scary, and that's when you start to panic and flail and drown, you know what I mean? Because you're just like, you start to create what you fear, which I heard that when I was first sober, and I thought, that is asinine. Create what you fear. Why would you do that? But inadvertently you do. Like, this is an extreme example, and just for the record, Matt has never been unfaithful, but if I am afraid that my significant other is going to leave, then that fear consumes me. And now I start saying, like, where were you? What are you doing? Can I check your phone? You know, I start obsessing about it until either the relationship is just broken because the trust is gone, or just like, screw it. If I'm in trouble for this already, I may as well go find Double D Debbie, you know what I mean, or whatever. Because that would be her name, and I would burn all of Matt's shit. But it wouldn't, I'm sure he didn't cheat on me. It wasn't personal. So, but I'd still burn all his shit.
Oh, how Matt always gets brought up on our podcast as an example of something he's never done.
I know. Just for the record. For the record.
Start with that before Double D Debbie came in the conversation. Yeah.
I don't even know a Double D Debbie.
Yeah. So.
But if I did, I'd burn her shit too. No, I'm kidding.
Well, we want to just thank again our sponsors, F5 Project, the Ridge Treatment and Reentry Center, GoAwayBear.com, Sherson Fargo, Heat Transfer Warehouse for just supporting us. This is awesome that we're able to have people who see the vision and want us to continue to do the things that we're doing. And of course, for everybody who has liked and subscribed so far, thank you. For everyone who is like contemplating it, their mouse is like hovering over it, please hit that like and subscribe. Let us know. We have amazing guests that are coming, just all sorts of really, really good stuff. And so we've been talking about just spiritual tools, just obviously with Easter kind of coming around. I think one of the things that like a tool that I didn't even know was happening until I kept coming. So we were talking about like when they would always close meetings and say, please keep coming back, it works. And it was just, I was like, oh, it's like, God, okay, here we go. It's just like another like.
Thank you, Sensei.
Yeah, just another thing. Because it's like in church, church we have those like phrases and things and pray until
Like
something
what?
happens. You ever heard
At
of that?
church?
Yeah, church.
Pray until what?
Pray until something happens.
I didn't grow up going to church, so I don't know any of the slogans.
Yeah, it's
No.
like push, pray until something happens.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Just keep pushing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pray until something happens. It was like one of the really popular ones. So then they were like,
They're so much nicer at church. Ours
I
is
know.
like, keep it simple, stupid. What does that even mean? KISS. I was like, that is the dumbest acronym I've ever heard.
That's because you're dumb.
You
Just
got
keep
two
coming.
eyes, you got 2 eyes, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Shut up. It's like, recovery meetings suck, man. You guys are so mean. You go to church and they're just like, keep praying until something happens.
No.
Well, if nothing happens, just keep praying. Like Dory from Finding Nemo. Just keep swimming.
Yeah. Something will happen.
well, that's what it was like. Like, it was very much the same. So it's like, oh, okay, like eye roll. Just like, all right, here's another thing. But when I did keep coming back and had the faith that I'm like, okay, this is, something I got to do now. Because we were, especially talking about like having this faith of like, I have no idea if I'm going to stay clean today.
Yeah.
But they keep telling me to keep coming back. So I just kept coming, having no real, like, I had the desire, like, obviously I had the desire to like get clean, but I had no idea if this is actually going to work.
Right.
People kept saying that if I keep coming, it's going to work. I just keep showing up. And then eventually, like, my faith kind of like matched up to it. Mm-hmm. But it was just such a different perspective. Like, seeing, and every time I would go to church, I wouldn't always feel like that. I wouldn't always have that same kind of like connection, that same kind of, just like, we're happy to see you, and just like a lot of these different things. When I would go into the rooms, and it didn't matter the room. Like, it could be I was at GA or NA or AA, or I was just going to everything I possibly could, because when I was like triggered, I was like, I need to find the first thing, and they said meetings work, so I was like, oh my God, I need to go to a meeting. And so every time I would go to those rooms at any different place, sometimes it was a clubhouse, sometimes it was like, I would go to like Olivet or From Top and all these different churches and things, and it was like the spaces, the message was always the same, but like it just felt the same too.
Yeah.
The message would always quote unquote be the same every time I was going to different churches, but it wouldn't always like feel that same way.
Right.
Like the feeling of what faith should look like was people who were coming in here and we were just wailing and just telling our stories, and it was just like all these different things. It was like there was truly no judgment. And it was awesome. I was like, oh, this is what faith looks like. It was crazy seeing faith activated in a meeting or with my sponsor, just on other places. But it's like, well, we would have a lot of these push and pray until something happens. Like, we had a lot of these phrases, but I would never see it in action.
Yeah.
I would never really like
that's
see
a great
anything
point. That's a
kinda
great
go.
point.
But then I would see it there, and then I was, oh, okay, cool. So even if my faith, even if I was like, you were talking about your crystals, like, but I'm like, well, if I'm seeing it work, and I'm like, oh, I mean, I may not necessarily think what you're doing is right, but it's working, so I need to continue to do that. I wouldn't always be able to see that in church, and it was such a different,
that's interesting,
weird concept, because I grew up in church. That's like, that was the, that's what you did.
It is. That's really a great point, because I think when I got to the meetings, it was like people were taking the action. They'd say, love your neighbor, all those things. But then in reality, if somebody shows up at your door and needs some shit, don't answer. You know what I mean? Because they're scary. Yeah. But when I got to recovery, it felt so much more inclusive. Like, oh, you need something? I will actually help with that.
Yeah.
And then I'm living my faith. And that I can get behind.
Yep.
But the idea of like yeah, it's good to help people, but somebody else should. Isn't there a place you can go to get this help or something? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like I can get behind the actions, and I think the actions is the only thing that created faith in my life, because I couldn't have thought my way into this no matter how hard I tried, because I overthink it, you know what I mean? I just mess it all up. But to take the action, to actually live altruistically and help with expecting nothing in return other than I get another day sober, has created this life of faith that's like something I can lean on, you know, where I just didn't think that would ever be possible in my life, because it was such somebody say God and I just get the shivers, you know. It's just so bizarre. But if you think about how hung up we get on these little things when we go to meetings, when we first go to meetings, like, well, I only go to this meeting, or somebody said they didn't like me, or blah, blah, blah. Like, this is life or death. This is life or death. You know what I mean? So figure yourself out and put all of the stuff that you have problems with on the back burner for now. You'll figure it out later. Just get there, for Christ's sake. Get to know some people. Have a little bit of an open mind and be willing to be uncomfortable, or you're not going to get better, you know? And all of that stuff, forget about it. You know what I mean? Because just put it all into context. If my dealer wanted me to pray at the end, you know what I mean, then I would definitely do that. But would you do it for your drug or whatever, yeah? Anyway, but yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, I think that's why I've stayed clean. You know, being able to have that connection, having real connection, but being able to see the things in action. Because it was great, like in church, we had like food program, like, you know, we would do all the different things, we'd volunteer and all this, or, you know, connecting people with resources. But sometimes, like, well, why can't we just do it? Why can't we just give them the food or give them the money or give whatever the thing is? If that person's asking for, why can't we just do it? Oh, no, we don't.
What if they take that money and buy alcohol?
Yeah,
like,
just all these things.
Well,
it's like
none of my business once it's their money.
Yeah, but like I've never had to question.
Maybe they won't die then.
You know, just being able to see it activated, specifically with faith. It's like seeing faith in action all the time was wonderful, and it was like really, really cool being able to be in this place of all these other different people who are sharing these different things and just going through all these different things. And it's like, man, we're all doing the same thing. We're all struggling. Yeah. No one person, you know, because I grew up in church, like you have the pastor, your bishop, and you kind of have your deacons. And you know, it was like this hierarchy where it's like, well, literally rich or poor, sober or not. You know, some meetings were like, man, I don't know. But like everyone was treated fairly. Everyone was treated equally. Like this felt like if we were to take communion in a meeting, which would be so weird if we ever had someone who was like, let's take communion. But it just felt
Shots!
You know, but it was like we're all equal. This is what it should be like. I think this is what God intended. Is like when we go to a meeting or we just go to a place and everybody's like on the same playing field because everybody's here for the same reason. We're just trying to get better.
Yeah.
I'd make the argument that not one person ever thinks everyone's equal. There's always someone you think you're better than.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, you usually say, I mean, when the meeting's over, that's when it comes out. But not during the meeting.
No.
Like, you know.
I think
the transparency is the transparency of like when people you look up to are willing to say like, oh, I burned that shit down. That is like, oh my gosh, now I want to be a part of this because I don't feel so.
Really get up there and like, I'm still
terrible.
a wreck.
Yeah.
I'm still just a, you know, like I'm just trying one day at a time. I'm like, that guy's 20 years sober. He's still struggling.
This is awful.
He thought it was going to come off as like, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
We're, you know, I'm struggling just as much as I want. You know, the guy's like, I don't want to struggle for 20 years.
It's a different struggle. It's a different struggle.
It's a different struggle.
Yeah. I can pay my mortgage.
Yeah.
I'm just struggling with different things now. Like whatever it is, parenting or whatever. High class problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of what am I going to eat?
I don't know where I'm going to stay. I heard a guy the other day who was like, I got to quit my job. I'm like, why? He's like, I need to go find a place to live. I was like, oh, it's such a vicious cycle. Because you need the job to pay
for
for the
real.
place.
It's terrible.
It's like, but you need to be able to find the place so you can't go to work.
Yep.
You know, that first year, it's it's life or death for a lot of guys. Like I've seen, there's more people that relapse in that first year, 90 days.
Yeah.
You know, than there. It doesn't mean that people at 20 years, 30 years don't relapse. There's actually a very high number that do. But not as much as, you know, the constant, you know, relapsing of that first, you know, couple weeks to year or whatever. Plus, when you're like relapsing around that time, like to me, it makes sense.
Yeah.
There's not a lot to lose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just like, well, I guess I could die.
Right.
But outside of that, I don't see my kids. I don't have a place to live. I don't have a car. I don't have. So like when you relapse, it's like, man, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like you just want to feel better.
Right.
You know, at 20 years, when you've built a life, that's suicide.
Yeah.
Like there's intent behind it. So it is scary to like think of someone who relapses that's been 20, 30 years sober, because it's borderline suicide.
Right.
You know, because it doesn't get better. Like even 20 years later, it's still, the outcome's going to be the same. Now you have all this stuff that you're going to completely destroy.
Right.
And as you're destroying it, it's not like you're getting better self-esteem.
Right.
You know, I've yet to see anyone who came in to recovery who got a bunch of time, relapsed, somehow lived, and come back, actually stay sober.
Yeah, that's
Like,
true.
I know it's out there.
Yeah.
I personally, and I might even know of a couple guys, I just don't know that I know, right? Because we probably go to different places or whatever the case may be. We're not connected as we used to be. But there is way more, and the crazy thing is those guys end up reaching out to me, you know, because of all the slipping and relapsing I did early on. Now looking back, I'm grateful that all the relapsing that I did was early in my first, like trying to get my first year. Because a lot of those guys got sober their first try.
Yeah.
And then they stayed sober for like 20 years, and then they relapse, and now they're doing all their relapsing now, if they make it through it.
Right.
And then they try to come back, and it's just not. There's something, I think what it is that it's a loss of place in the group.
Right.
There was a hierarchy in recovery, just like everyone else. You guys are 20 years, you got 30 years, you got 10, you got 5, whatever. And you got some key players that were real sober for a while, and then they sponsor a lot of guys, and they, whatever. And then they relapse, and then they come back, and it's like, they never really lost their place, but to them they did.
Oh, for sure.
The way that people look at them, it's just like, it's kind of like, you know how people treat you when you lose a friend, or your mom dies or something like that. You can see they're just like a little more careful around you. They're a little more sensitive, like we don't want to stir the boat, rock the boat. And a lot of times these guys just want to be treated the same.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. They want to get their balls busted and made fun of.
Yeah,
and,
for real.
But at the same time, some of them don't. Because this is like walking on eggshells, And the only experience I have with that is that I had, the last, run that I went on, I had been sober for like 6 or 7 months, and then I relapsed, and then I went and broke into a bunch of places that were like owned by people in recovery, and then I went on the run, and then I came back, and it was like I was walking on eggshells in that meeting because there were people at that meeting that I had robbed, and I was just like, at least with the guys who had a lot of time and then come back, they didn't do shit to anybody. They just went out and got drunk and came back and was like, I guess I'm not perfect. And then, I came back, I was like, hey, everybody, I robbed half of you, sorry. Every time I got up to the podium to speak, I was like, I feel like I'm just doing like a large amends to the group. I did more damage to my group through, getting drunk and relapsing and stealing and lying and, whatever, than I ever did to my, to people prior to that. I mean, I did some crazy shit, don't get me wrong. But it was different because I didn't have to go back and hang out with them.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean? I had to go back and I was like, well, I guess I'll go to this meeting And half the people here I owe amends to. So I get, like, in the sense of, like, being uncomfortable there. But the only way through that, right, is to just be, like, super transparent about it. Just be like, listen, I'm fucking uncomfortable being in this meeting. I think this is a stupid idea.
Yeah.
I think I should go to a different meeting. And luckily I had people in my life who were like, well, you shouldn't have done something dumb. It wouldn't be a dumb idea if you didn't do dumb shit. And he's like, and honestly, no one here, they all get it.
Yeah.
And
And don't make places unapproachable, or you're just. But when I left AA for a while, I didn't drink, but I was gone for a few years, and this illness is insidious, and it is just like creeps up on you. And it told me, I mean, it just like I was convinced I just had depression, it had nothing to do with this because I'd done the AA thing, whatever. But it is humbling to come back as having been a big deal, you know what I mean, or whatever. It's good. It was good for me, and I'm so grateful for it. But I was like, I went back to a meeting I made. And I was new again, and these girls would be like, "Hi, welcome. I'm so and so," and I'm like, "Bitch, I made this meeting." You know what I mean? But I just shut up, and I'm like, "This is on me. I gotta just be humble," and you know what I mean? Like, I am willing to learn because that's how miserable I am. Yeah. But I did whatever, 18 years sober, and I wanted to die because it was just like. And I was convinced it had to be something else because I'd done all this, you know. But I lost connection with it. I lost connection with the people, which is my spirituality. You know what I mean? So it just like, because I was busy and I was a big deal and I had a career and little kids and whatever, and I forgot to put my recovery first. And it has to come before my kids. It has to come before my marriage. It just has to come first, or the rest of it just slowly crumbles, you know, because I wreck it with my best ideas.
I have the opposite kind of issue or whatever, because I go to meetings and there are always people there that know who I am, not from AA. So it's just like, I'll be sitting talking to some guys I really enjoy, you know, being around in AA or whatever, in 12-step meetings. And some guys come out are like, "Are you? Oh, it's Adam from F5 Project. You're a big fucking deal, man." It's just like, that's very embarrassing. I just, you know, like and so then it kind of like infiltrated the meetings, you know, so it's like, you know, it's not even really that fun because like I'll go, you know, for my, like speaker meetings are nice. Because then no one can talk to me. You know? Like I'll just sit there, but a lot of times even when I go to those meetings, then they ask me to speak. It has nothing to do with what I've done, like in, like recovery as much as what I've done out in the professional arena, and it's just like, and so then I go to I'm going to try a small little clubhouse meeting, and then I go to that meeting. There's like 4 guys there looking for housing. I'm like, fuck, man, I can't go anywhere.
That's
my
a pretty
star
good
is
problem.
too big.
It's all right. It's all right. It's just a little embarrassing or whatever, because you're around your friends or whatever, and it's just like, you know, they've known you since you were just like just a piece of crap.
And they love you enough to say like, "Oh, he is a big deal. Let's just get on to that topic."
I got one friend who's just like, "You might be a big deal, but you're still a piece of shit."
I know what you've done.
I know.
He was the guy that when I got sober, his couch was the first one that I slept on. So he was, you know, and he, you know, the cool thing about him is he's never taken credit for anything. You know, because I'll have people kind of scattered around their way when they'll tell this. They'll be like, "Yeah, I was there and I helped Adam do this, or I helped Adam do this." Like, I don't even think he's ever mentioned me ever in anything that he's ever done. And I mention him, you know. And then he'll come up, he's like, "Yep, you're still a piece of shit." Thanks, Ray. Thanks.
The kid that never ages,
He still looks like he's
I know,
18.
it's crazy. It's crazy.
So do you think, like, obviously for those who are still, you know, still trying to find the spirituality, or maybe they're like, you know, fuck it, I don't want a higher power, I don't want to like, do any of that. Is it possible to not have any sort of belief in anything bigger than yourself and still be in recovery?
I think so.
It'd be, I mean, if it wasn't possible, it'd be, I mean, your idea of God wouldn't change either. So, like, if you came in with whatever belief you had, let's say it was a God, most people I know that stay sober, their views and worldviews change over time. And I'm not saying that, you know, people who come in as atheists will change as, you know, like maybe they'll stick onto that or whatever, but them as humans will change over time. And so I think that if you're like seeking out recovery, it doesn't really matter what you believe, right? It might be kind of weird going through the steps when it talks about God or whatever, but I don't think, I mean, and if people are in that meeting or in that group that make a big deal about that with you, then just go to a different meeting. You know, you'll eventually find a meeting where it's just like, you know, it's filled with agnostics, Muslims, Christians, you know, atheists, agnostics, you know, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons. Like it's just, it's everybody. Like the whole point of it is to be like a primer to your life, not to be your life. You know. We only go, like I go to a few meetings, like a few hours a week I'm in recovery, and the rest of that time I'm at work and with my family. It's meant to be practiced in your life. Right? And it even says in the book that it's only meant to be in our spare time, not like to build a whole empire of recovery and save everyone. You know, it was never meant to be that way. It was meant to be an enhancement to get you back into your life and be a better Christian, be a better doctor, be a better, you know, whatever it is that you are, that you identify as.
And it was never religious. And I just think sometimes, like when the books were written, they just didn't have the words to say, this has nothing to do with religion. You know what I mean? Just like, and if that's causing you a lot of stress in newly recovery, put it on the back burner. Get to know people. Just get to know people. And the rest will be clear later on. You just don't have to figure it out. Because I've never heard anybody say, well, I went to the bar, and then I remembered this worksheet I did on relapse prevention, and I decided, I'm going home. Never, ever, ever. But I have heard a lot of people say, and then I thought about this person I met, and I didn't want to let them down. You know what I mean? So it's all about connections. It's not about digging deeper into your psyche, any of that stuff. That'll all do all that later. You just got to get connected to other people. And start there, you know, because, and believe me, I handed out a lot of relapse prevention packets that I knew were busy work, but they, you know, they make some things clearer for you, but they are not going to save you at the end of the day, that's for sure. So, anyway.
That's true.
Proximity of a community. That's probably the most important aspect. I told a guy last night at relapse prevention that I was like, just treat this as like your constant. Come back here once a week. Tell us what you did. What did you try different? I was like, you can go out there, try going to AA, try going to NA the following week. Come back here and tell me it sucked. Just keep coming back here until we can find what it is that's going to work for you. And don't drink. And even if you do, come back.
For real.
You know, proximity and you know, consistency. Those are probably, you know, surrounding myself with a bunch of recovery strangers and then making it consistent. That's probably the two things that I think set me aside from what I was constantly relapsing before. But even when I was doing that, I still kept coming. You know, no matter what. I was like, you know what? At one time I was like, I'm going to prove to them I can keep drinking and living a normal life. And I'd go get drunk and I'd come back and be like, oh, that worked out for you. And be like, thanks, Bob. Great advice.
How normal was your life last week? And really, like when I first got sober, it was not like, oh, this is going to connect me to a spiritual blah, 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 that kept me coming back. It was like, oh my gosh, there are like 10 single guys here. I'm coming back. You know what I mean? So whatever the reason is to go back, go back. I don't care. It doesn't have to be healthy at all.
I originally just went back because the guys were like wanted to hang out. Like it was just weird having friends. You know, like because I came from a small town, I didn't go to church, I wasn't part of any, you know, like I kicked out of school. Like by the time I got to recovery, it was just like man, these guys are nuts. And they're sober, they're young, and they're just like me. Like, we think the same.
Yeah.
I thought I was like broke.
Yeah.
Like broken. Like, because I'd go to church and people would be like, you know, worshiping with their hands up in the air. I'm just like, man, they got to be ripped out of their minds. It's just like, there's no way. You know, and then we like have our little meetings and stuff and Bible studies. And I'm like, I am not like these people.
Yeah.
Right.
They are so grateful and like, you know, and nice, and be like, Adam, I saw that you were on the Valley News Most Wanted. I was like, yeah, I lie to my wife sometimes. We are not the same. I lie to everyone. I steal cars and shit, and wake up and detox with mugshots, you know. So when I showed up to AA and I heard their stories, I was like, man, that guy's nuts, that guy's nuts, I am nuts, we are nuts together. Like,
and they got their life back.
yeah, they got their shit together.
Yeah.
That was probably the most impressive part. I was like, that guy actually gets to talk to his kids.
Yeah, I know, amazing.
You know, he's got a job at a place that if they knew, like, there's no way he would have that job.
Yeah.
Right.
So I just saw little miracles, and I was just like, that's really probably what kept me coming back, is that I might one day be able to live similar lives to these guys.
Yep.
And it worked.
Yeah, not like that, you. You're a little miracle.
Now I'm a big deal and I can't go to them.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so egotistical.
Yeah, it does change it a little bit, but yeah, still the idea is the same. Yeah. But you don't want to get to where you're at a place where like, well, I can't go. There's other professionals I've worked with that are like, well, I can't go because what if a client's there? And I'm like, oh, well, then they'd see that you actually practice what you preach. So, you know.
Yeah. It just gets weird when they start like wanting to like be friends and hang out. And I really, really want to. Like, I want to sponsor them or whatever. I just can't because it's just, there's too much conflict. But I had a guy last night ask me at Relapse Front, he was like, will you sponsor me? I was like, man, I wish.
Yeah.
I wish I could.
Yeah. And
I feel like I'm like a bad example to recovery when I was like, but I know plenty of guys.
Yeah, I can hook you up.
You know, so.
And that's the biggest part, because it would be a ethical thing. But anyway.
But it is what it is. I'm glad to see them though. I'll talk to them.
for sure.
You know, if they're at coffee, I'll even sit down and have coffee with them after the meeting and stuff. I just won't have that intimate kind of sponsorship, relationship. But there's so many people in AA, I keep saying, in recovery that are like very good at that stuff.
And even if the label's not there, like the label of sponsor or whatever, talk to everybody. Everybody wants to hear themselves give advice, so they will give it freely. You know what I mean? But yeah, just connect.
Yeah. Well, we have a couple more minutes left. Is there anything else you guys want to share? Anything new or things we can give to the world?
Give to the world. Because that's who's watching this.
Yeah.
Millions and millions of people.
You're welcome.
You see the analytics. You know that's not right.
It reaches millions.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think millions are actually. I think it probably shows up on their screen. You're like, oh, there's Adam.
This is a question I've gotten often from people that like listening to us. Where do they find the recordings we've done? Where do they find those?
Oh, yeah. Well, we're on all the major platforms, so Apple, Spotify.
And they just put in FI Project Podcast.
FI Recovery Podcast.
FI Recovery.
Or FI Project. Yeah, if they search or FI Project.
They can go to the website, fiproject.org/podcast, and they'll find it there.
Okay, cool.
So go there.
Yeah. I'll have to send
I'm guessing you're already there, though, if you're watching this right now. But
I just, you'll be redundant by the time you see this part.
You keep telling me to go to the podcast when I'm watching the podcast.
I'm watching the podcast. It's like some Inception.
No, we appreciate our followers, our subscribers, our sponsors, everybody. Like it's a blessing to be able to meet here once a week. And this is one of my meetings.
Yeah, for real.
You know, so I appreciate you guys, and I'm proud of all the staff at F5 and the Ridge, and doing just an amazing job helping as many people as possible that come through the door showing up at trap houses to, I don't even know half the places that we go. I hear stories all the time. It's like, where'd you meet this guy? I went to his house. I was like, oh my God. I love you, Amber.
Side note.
Yeah.
Side note.
Next time, take someone
Yeah.
with you. Anyways, no, that's it. I'm just really appreciative.
Yeah, so tune in. We'll be back with more. Scott will be back. He's out traveling, so I want to, of course, shout out to Hadi. We're always thankful to have another host and another great things. We have a special guest that'll be joining us on our next show, so definitely look forward to that. We're just really grateful. And also, this is just a plug. If you're interested and want to come onto the show, have a great story you want to share, just follow us on socials, hit us in our DMs, email Adam or I. However you want to get a hold of us, please let us know. We would definitely love to be able to have you and be able to help, share just more stories of people who are doing awesome things. So thank you again, F5 Project, the Ridge Treatment and Reentry Center, GoAwayBear.com, Heat Transfer Warehouse, Shirts from Fargo. Thank you for your sponsorships. And each one of you, have a great day in recovery.